And I want to thank the staff for everybody cooperating and trying to get this, especially the CAC members holding on. Thank you very, very much. And welcome to the first year of 2022. At this time, Michelle, what are we going to take roll? And then we can go from there.
Mr. Cunha,
Here.
Mr. Clark,
Here.
Ms. Brown.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Harrell. I see him. Can you hear me? Oh, he has his hand raised. Mr. Harrell is here. Mr. Hofdahl.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Savage.
Here.
Mr. Williams. Mr. Rios. Ms. Austin Tibbetts. Thank you. I see her here. Ms. Temple, Ms. Deming, Ms. Dyer. I see Brittany also. Mr. Liba.
I am here, and can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you very much. Mr. Helm.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Fast.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Ramsey. Mr. Cryer. Mr. Crump. Ms. Sharp. Mr. Hayworth. Mr. Ahmed. Mr. Ward.
Here.
Thank you very much. Mr. Blank. Mr. O'Brien.
Here.
Mr. Medeiros.
Here.
Through the chair, we do have a quorum. We also have a few new members in attendance. Mayor Mary Fast, Mayor Dennis Medeiros, and I believe that's it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. At this time, make sure everybody turns off their electronic devices of any type that they have at their homes or wherever they are, so we don't have any feedback into what's going on today. And also the public has, under item number 4, the right to talk on any item that is not on the agenda. So at that time, if the folks that from the public wish to bring up anything that's not related to the agenda items, they can do it at that time on item number 4 in the public comment. So thank you. Why don't we go ahead and we call the meeting to order. We've had roll call, and everybody's had an opportunity to look at the minutes. And if there's any discussion from the minutes from December 7th, at this time, we'll take from the CAC members if they have any items to be changed on the minutes at this time. And Michelle will be able to see who wants, if there's a change. Okay, great.
Correct. Through the chair, I see no indication of member comments on the minutes.
Okay, do we need to go to public?
We do.
Okay, at this time, we'll go to the north. Any public comments from the north?
Oh, through the chair, it looks like Mr. Silesnov has his hand raised and has a question.
Oh, okay. Mr. Silesnov, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, illustrious committee. My name is Johnny Silesnoff, and I've been appointed to this board through Supervisor Tom Wheeler when I was in Madera County. As of December 1st, my duties have changed, and I am now the Assistant State Conservationist for Field Operations Area 3 for the USDA NRCS. I probably believe, Mr. Chair, that at this time I should resign my position from the committee. I do it with great sadness, but I really enjoyed working with everybody on this committee, especially the Air District and all of our partners. But again, I wish everyone good luck, but I think it's probably best for me to recuse myself at this time.
Okay, Johnny, thank you very, very much, Mr. Silesnoff, for your dedication that you have been on the board as a CAC members, and we appreciate all the work and efforts, and we continue to look forward of having you come in when you can, are able to do it under public comment or whatever. And even your agency, NRCS, has been a great partner for agriculture, as well as the San Joaquin Valley Air District, as well as ARB and EPA. So thank you for your time and dedication. Appreciate that. Now we'll go.
Thank you, Manuel and everyone.
Thank you again. Now we'll go back to the north for any public comment from the
So-
minutes.
Through the chair, we do not have any public members in the north, south, or central offices, so it would just be on Zoom for the meeting.
Okay, great. Any Zoom, anybody on Zoom?
And I do not see an indication of public comments on Zoom.
Okay, so we'll accept the minutes as done for December 7th. We'll go right now to item number 4, public comment. At this time, we'll go to the public in the north. If there's any comment, or at this time, Michelle, do we have anybody in the north?
Through the chair, no public members in the north, south, or central.
Okay, so we'll go to Zoom.
And
Anybody?
it looks like no indication of public comment on Zoom.
Okay, great. So we'll go from item 4. Thank you. We'll go to item number 5, chair comments. Again, I want to thank the staff for getting through this electronics thing. Really weird. I'm not touching any dials, so I don't lose anybody on the Zoom today. So I just keep my fingers on the papers and not touching any dials. So staff, you got total control. And Samir, you got total control of everything there. So I am just looking at a screen. So again, that's my comment. I look forward to providing and doing what we can to make an effective meetings throughout this year and next year, but especially this year with all the stuff that's going on. So again, I want to thank the staff, Michelle and everybody, and Samir for your collaboration and working. All right, let's go to item number 6, the executive director, Samir.
Yeah, hi, good morning, CSE members. You can all hear me, I hope. Well, first of all, I just want to thank Mayor Fast and Mayor Medeiros for surviving the new CAC member hazing tradition that we have at the CAC, to really just start with a little bit of chaos in the beginning, and just to just to welcome you to the the CAC committee here. But in all seriousness, wanted to welcome the new members. Really look forward to working with you, and just wanted to let you know that we are a resource here at the Air District for you. So between meetings at any point in time, as you acquaint yourselves with the complex air quality issues that we all work to tackle here, just wanted to make sure you knew that we were here to help you and to provide you with whatever information support that you need. So please feel free to reach out to me directly or any of our staff to get any of the information or background that you might need. And certainly we'll be working closely with you. Just wanted to give you a couple of quick updates. Going back to our January board meeting, a couple of items that I wanted to bring to your attention. I wanted just to let you know, and happy to report that we did go through our annual local, state, and federal audit. We do this every year for a variety of reasons, and had a report to our board. Once again, had an excellent audit, clean report, no issues identified in that process. As part of that, the annual comprehensive financial report is also made available. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and once again, just happy to report that we're able to validate the strong fiscal health and reporting of the district here. We took a really important item to our board that was approved by the board at the January board meeting, to add $4 million of funding into the Valley's Tune and Tune Up program. This is the vehicle repair program that is focused in our lower income and disadvantaged communities. We, with the COVID situation, the shutdowns that started up here, back in 2020, we had to really quickly respond to this is an event-based model traditionally, where we had these big events and people would show up to these events where they were able to get their vehicle emissions tested, and then we could couple them with resources for helping them fix their vehicle and get it back into registration. Obviously had to shut those events down, so we transitioned the program to a model by which they could still access those funds, but they didn't have to necessarily show up to an event. Then with the reopening, we were able to get events back on track. So we took an item to our board where we basically recommended that we, in parallel, continue to have events, as well as maintaining an ability for residents to take advantage of the program through non-event based participation. So I just want to let you know that we've been experiencing some very heavy demand in the program. It's been lauded by entities like the UCLA Luskin Center for Innovation as an effective model for reaching our impacted communities. We have just want to let you know, there's 3 events that are coming up here by March. I'm sorry, 2 events that are coming up here We had one recently at the Madera Fairgrounds. We have, that was on January 22nd. There's one on February 12th in Bakersfield at the Kern County Fairgrounds, and one on March 5th in Stockton at the San Joaquin County Fairgrounds. That information is available on our webpage, and we'll be doing a lot more outreach between now and the events to make sure folks are aware of the resources that are there that they can take advantage of. I also wanted to let you know that the board approved unanimously the expansion of our burn cleaner program in the Stockton community through the AB 617 community program that we've been working on there for the last couple of years. One of the big measures that is in the plan that was adopted for that community was to offer some increased incentives and do some outreach in the community to basically help residents transition away from wood burning to cleaner electric and gas technology. So that is something that we'll be working with the community steering committee and local partners to make sure is made available in that community. And then the only other thing I wanted to bring up is that there is an important item coming up in our February board meeting to provide a report on the agricultural open burning phase out program, the measure that we put together that our board has put into place, working in partnership with the agricultural community, with the State Air Resources Board. This is a major initiative at the Air District to support this transition away from open burning. There's a lot of funding that we're also making available to support growers in that process. So we are going to report out on how that is going and let the board and the public know where we are in that phase out, and may have some recommendations as well for enhancements as we move forward with that. And I'll leave it there and see if anybody has any questions or comments, and then turn it back over to the chair.
At this time, thank you, Samir, very much. Let's open it to the board for any questions of Samir on his report. At this time, we'll go to the north. Any board members? Any questions for Samir?
Manuel, this is Chris. I have a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
Good morning, all, and Samir, thanks for the report. I'm actually going to ask about something that wasn't in your report. Can you give us an update, please, on the equivalency report with EPA, as well as progress being made on the ERC banking issues? I know those are big topics, but if you can give us top-level summaries, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you through the chair. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, that is obviously a very big priority for the district, as the ERC and permitting system are very important programs. So that work continues there. I'll kind of keep it high level, for the purpose of the CAC here, and is one of those issues, I think, for those new members too, that we can spend some time, maybe catching you up as well, because it is a pretty complex set of issues. But that work does continue. We do anticipate, that there is in the near future here, with EPA continuing to review our rule, as well as the equivalency report that our board heard, back in, I want to say it was December. We did file the latest equivalency report to, as required under our rule. That is with EPA, they undergo review of that process. There's a public advisory work group that is looking at a variety of issues, including, which is one of the major priorities for us right now, how we actually develop some new banking opportunities to deal with the shortfall and the major challenges that we have with coming up with federally equivalent and acceptable surplus reductions, which is what was really at the crux of the issue with the emission reduction credit program. So that is something that is undergoing very close review with CARB and EPA at this point, and I'm not sure exactly what the next steps are going to be in terms of where that goes. There's a lot of interaction going on with the regulated community, with organizations that are interested in this process, as well as with the oversight agencies, CARB and EPA. I'm happy to talk some more offline with anybody who's interested in that, but we may provide an update on this at our February board meeting, just based on some of the recent interactions that we've been having with those agencies to bring everybody up to speed on what the next steps might be. But it is going to be a long process to ultimately resolve the underlying issues with with the equivalency system, and get it to a place to where there are bankable opportunities, and enough credits in the system that will allow, for some of the ongoing, permitting needs that we have in that program. But it no doubt is going to be a major challenge for us moving forward.
And thanks, Samir. Appreciate that. I might call you separately offline and talk about it. But if, Mr. Chair, I think I've requested before, but I'd like this to be a standing item on this agenda, where we get a most recent status update for the full committee, because it is, in my mind, the single most pressing issue nearly that the that the board staff is trying to tackle, and I think it'd be good to get regular updates here as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Absolutely, I think, Samir, if that's possible, and Michelle, that we could have that as a standing thing, at least for the next several months. Let's see if we can have a report as one of those items under like number 7 or 8 or whatever it is, that we'd have a report from your key staff, Samir, as well as yourself. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I'll work with you, Manuel, on the frequency of that as well, and see whether it's a
Perfect.
monthly or some other frequency, just to make sure that we
have
it's
something
at
to
the
do.
appropriate level. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, is that okay, Chris?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And again, I want to apologize to the two new members that have joined the CAC. I know that there will be some more. And I think down the road here, Michelle and Samir, we probably have a workshop for those folks, the new members, to get them up to date on some of the things we're doing and what goes on. So that way they'll just flow right into the process. So again, congratulations to the 2 new members. And we still have some more coming as well. We've been working with Samir and Michelle, and everybody's been doing a great job in outreaching. So for all the 3 different committees. So thank you. All right, let's go right to
Through the chair. I
Oh,
apologize. It looks like Mayor Fast has a question. She has her hand raised.
okay, great. Go ahead, Mayor.
I have a question on the phasing out of the open burning for ag. So what are you providing to do with the trees and the brush and all of that is not able to be burned now?
Through the chair, maybe I could just give a quick response to that. Yeah, so thank you, Mayor Fast. That's a great question, and obviously this measure is one that is a very important issue that we have to keep a close eye on, just given the significance of agriculture in the valley and the impacts that these kind of measures may have. So we've been working very closely with the agricultural community, with researchers, to look at a variety of alternatives to the open burning of the material that's generated. And this is a very long standing and ongoing process. So we phased out, for example, most orchards going back actually over a decade now. So a lot of the orchard removals have had to deal with their material primarily through chipping, maybe going to biomass, but more recently they've also been chipping it a little bit finer and working the material back into the ground through what's called whole orchard incorporation, or soil incorporation in short. That's something that's been developing quite a bit, particularly in the nut orchard categories, but also across some of the other ones. And then most recently, we put in what we're calling the final phase out for some of the remaining categories that were more difficult to phase out. It's taken quite a bit of work to really look at some alternatives and they're still in development in a lot of ways for categories like vineyard removals, for grapes, where there's certainly been a number of challenges over the years in looking for alternatives to burning in those cases. But there are some that are emerging now, and it's something that, and part of reporting back to our board, has been this ongoing commitment to really take a close look at how that transition is going. We were able to secure last year in the state budget $180 million of dedicated funding to the San Joaquin Valley that is being implemented through the Air District, that we make available to support growers. We actually help reduce the cost of these very costly alternatives through that grant funding. So if you were a grower and had a removal, you're able to come into us, get a voucher for a certain level of funding to then allow you to work with a contractor to deploy one of these different alternatives that involve generally some sort of chipping, and then something being done with the material other than burning the material. So that that's a major effort. We're literally spending tens of millions of dollars right now out there in the community, supporting growers and doing these different alternatives. But it is something that we have to keep a very close eye on. So I do intend on keeping the CAC updated on that as it develops.
So is that something that's put out to the farm bureaus then, or how do you promote those programs?
Yeah, we've and others like Mr. Cunha can weigh in on this, but we've worked in very close coordination with the farm bureaus, with all the various commodity organizations. We do paid advertising, we do social media, we actually do we participate in grower meetings when those happen. It's a and I also want to share, at the bodies like the CAC, any information, if you could help us get the word out, if you feel like there's groups of growers that may not be aware of this, but it is a very broadly utilized program right now, and with widespread attention, and we're always looking for ways to get the word out even better. If you have any ideas, I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in from your experiences, but
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, I can assure you that the Ag Burn program has been a collaborative with all the farm bureaus in the Valley. I've had meetings with, and then the other ag groups, Citrus Mutual, Allied Grape Growers, Fresh Fruit, Pistachio. And it's been a great collaborative of people working together and trying to understand, as well as Samir had just spoke, that the report in February, as well as we will be meeting in 6 months when we first started in September to not finalize, but to understand what obstacles, if there's any out there, from what has been going on with the machinery, the type of machinery and the technology. And the partnering with this has also been ARB. So there's been a lot of collaborative. It's been a little difficult, there's no doubt about it. But the farmers have been very cooperative, a tremendous cooperation, and again, doing their part, just like the farm machinery, the pumps, the conservation management practices. Farmers they've been really putting forward and doing their things in all the different counties. So I appreciate your question, and it was well worth for you asking that, and we appreciate that. But we will be keeping everybody informed on the entire Ag Burn as we move forward with even future funding down the road. So thank you, Mayor, very much. Anybody else in the north from board members for Samir? If not, let's go to the south, the southern part of the valley. Any CAC members, questions for Samir on his report or items that may bring up a question? Okay,
I
seeing,
see no indication of
okay.
comments.
Well, let's go here to the central. Is there anybody in the central that we have? I don't see anything. Okay, let's now go to the public. Will anybody in the public in the north, central, or south coast? Anybody?
Through the chair, I see no indication of public comment.
Okay, let's go to Zoom. Any Zoom?
No public comment.
Okay, great. All right, Samir, thank you very, very much. Appreciate that. Let's go to item number 7, rules. And I don't know who's doing that, but
We have John
Miss-
Klassen.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Clausen, welcome, sir.
Mr. Chair, if I could just jump in
Yes.
here for a second.
Please.
So we're actually able to, we actually have the VTC room set up to be able to conduct the rest of the meeting actually in the VTC room. So I'll leave it up to you, but if we take about a 30-second or so break, we could actually move right over there and just finish up the meeting in a more traditional, a little bit more comfortable format. So I'll leave that up to you, but
I think I'd look forward to that, because this
all right.
thing is really giving me the, I don't know. Yeah, so we're going to take a 30 seconds. Everybody hold on, get up, have a cup of coffee, have a Pepsi or a Coke or whatever it is, or a hot tea. But we'll be right back with you in 30 seconds. So thank you for holding, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. I'm still on in case you need anything in the meantime.
I'm not hearing anything. Do I have to redo my audio?
I'm not hearing anything either.
You're hearing me, so we're doing okay.
Yes, indeed. I am hearing you.
I think we can hear one another, but perhaps not Michelle.
She had her speaker on mute. I don't know if that makes a difference, but yeah. And I think they moved the host to be somebody other than her too.
Ah.
Would you like that? I can do that.
I thought there was another one of those. Right there.
Oh, yeah, there is.
Jeez. Open my eyeballs.
Me too.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Do you hear me, members?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can, getting Michelle. Rolling right now. Thank you very much. Sorry about that.
So we're good now.
Are you ready to go down? Yeah, I have no Wi-Fi.
Okay.
I'm ready. I could present it. Right here.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with item number 7, update on attainment plans and rules with John Klassen.
Make it quick, John. All right. Good morning, everybody. It's John Klassen, Director of Air Quality Science and Planning. Thanks for your patience. Just wanted to give you a brief update this morning on different planning actions that have happened recently and different rule actions. So concerning our PM 2.5 plans that we've been updating you on throughout the process, just the end of last week, EPA finalized their finding that the San Joaquin Valley has attained the 24-hour average portion of the 1997 PM 2.5 standards. So really happy to see that finalized and see that action in the Federal Register. And then also regarding PM 2.5, at the end of last month, EPA proposed approval of our serious area attainment plan for the 2012 PM 2.5 standard. And this is for the annual average of 12 micrograms per meter cubed. So really happy to see that proposed approval as well. We're continuing to work on our process in developing our ozone plan for the 2015 8-hour ozone standard set at 70 parts per billion. We've had a few public workshops along the way, developing the different elements of that plan, and we'll be continuing that over the coming months, and then taking that to our board for consideration by the middle of this year, this summer.
regarding different rules and regulations, things we've been working on. Just last month at our December board hearing, a couple months ago in December, our board amended a number of rules that were related to the 2018 PM 2.5 plan. One of them was Rule 4354, glass melting furnaces, and Rule 4352, solid fuel fired boilers, steam generators, and process heaters. These were both commitments from our 2018 PM 2.5 plan, and in December, our board approved amendments to those rules. In December, our board also approved amendments to Rule 4905, gas-fired fan type central furnaces. And a few other rules that we're continuing to work on, that we've been working on last year, and it'll continue into this year, is a number of rules related to leak detection and repair requirements. We've had a few workshops. We're planning another workshop here in the first quarter of 2022 and continuing this work on those rules. And then in December, we kicked off a public process to consider amendments to Rule 4550, conservation management practices. This was a scoping meeting at the end of December, and we will continue to work on that throughout this year in 2022 and have additional workshops. We are also taking an item to our board next month or this month in February regarding some old county equipment breakdown rules where they need to be removed from the SIP because they're old and outdated. So we'll be going through a process there. And then finally, on the last part of the page of the handout, we are working through a public process now to consider amendments to Rules 4460 and 3200 regarding fence line and community air monitoring. And we're actually having a scoping meeting tonight at 5 o'clock to start that public process and get some feedback as we continue to work on that later this year in 2022. So I'll stop there and I'll see if there are any comments or questions from the committee.
Through the chair, if I could make a quick comment.
Go ahead, please, Samir.
I just want to let the CAC members know that on item number 10, John will be planning on sharing quite a bit more detail about a lot of what he just covered, both on the planning and the regulatory side. So you may want to hold off on any questions until that item as well. Just want to let you know, because that was a little bit of a fire hose on a lot of activity going on, but we'll be planning on sharing more details with you a little bit later on in the agenda as well.
Okay, great. Let me just open this up first to the north if there's some brief questions. If not, as Samir stated, we'll be coming back to this item in number 10 in more details where we'll spend more, and there's more handout materials on that. So is there any question other than some of those other items from any of the board members in the north? I don't see any. Okay, how about the south? I think we're good there. Come back to the central. Yeah. Nothing. Okay, so let's open it to the public in the north, central, or south. Is there any public comment?
No indication.
Okay, let's go to Zoom. Any Zoom public comment?
No comment. No public comment.
Okay, great. So thank you very much, John. We'll look forward to on item 10. Okay, let's go to California Air Resources Board. Laura, are you patiently waiting there for us?
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chair. This is Laura Carr with the California Air Resources Board. I'm an air pollution specialist in the Air Quality Planning and Science Division, and I have a very brief update today on actions that the CARB board took in January. Just one item to cover, in fact, and it's actually related to the 70 parts per billion ozone standard that John was just talking about. The board adopted the California Clean Fuels for Fleets certification, or the CFF certification, for the 70 ppb ozone standard. And this certification demonstrates that California's low emission vehicle program exceeds the level of emissions reductions that would be achieved through implementation of the US EPA federal clean fuel vehicle programs. So that means that the Clean Fuels for Fleets certification meets Clean Air Act requirements for ozone non-attainment areas that are serious, which includes the San Joaquin Valley. So the CARB board directed our executive officer to submit this Clean Fuels for Fleet certification to US EPA as a revision to the California SIP. And that's all I have for today.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. This time we'll go to the north. Any CAC member comments or questions?
Hey, Manuel. So I see no indication of member comments, and since everyone's on Zoom, we can just do one request for members and then one for public. Makes it easier.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any comments from the CAC members, all three areas?
Seeing none?
Saying none, okay. How about the public, both all three areas and all areas?
I see no public comment.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Let's go to item number 9. Tom Jordan on the air quality funding and progress statement of budget. So we'll go with Tom.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Samir, did you want to start?
Oh, Manuel.
Yeah, just real quick introduction. Sorry, just a real quick introduction. You know, as I'm sure all of you know, the state budget process is underway with the governor's proposed budget, and one of the really important roles that the CAC has played in the past has been to really take a close look at what sort of clean air opportunities may exist, and that the CAC would want to consider supporting as we advocate really heavily for the needed resources to the region to support the clean air mission that we have here. So we're here to report out on what we're seeing in the budget, and also hopefully have a good discussion around you know, what sort of approach the CAC may want to take in advocating for those very much needed resources to support the various initiatives that we're implementing right now. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tom Jordan, our Senior Policy Advisor, to give the CAC an update and maybe talk about next steps as well.
All right, thanks, Samir. As Samir mentioned, the governor's come out with his proposed state budget, which kicks off the state budget process. The way the process works, the governor comes out with a proposal in January. Then the legislature typically has legislative hearings to talk about that proposal and to come up with ideas of their own. And then in May, the governor comes out with a revised proposal based upon updated budget numbers after the tax filing season and such. And then the governor and the legislature work together to come up with a compromise budget that is adopted by the constitutional deadline of, I think, June 15th. The last couple of years, the budget process has kind of been anything but normal, and that hasn't all been a bad thing. The state has had record surplus funds that they've allocated, and some of the pots that we're interested in, like the cap and trade revenues, have been higher than anticipated. And so what usually happens primarily during the springtime has actually been more of a whole year process, and we've actually done pretty well in that process last year and then going into this year. So starting last fall, the district started sharing our priorities with the administration prior to their budget coming out. We've had a lot of discussions with stakeholders throughout the Valley. We've talked to key members of the legislature from the Valley, and the governor's come out with a budget proposal that actually hits on a lot of our priorities. We still think we could potentially do better, but I wanted to hit some highlights of what's come out in the governor's budget so far. First off, he's proposed $150 million statewide for the farmer program. Last year, he'd actually provided the final budget provided $213 million for farmer. The Valley gets about 80% of those funds, so it's a very important funding source for us to replace ag equipment in the Valley. The $150 million was actually part of a 2-year deal that the legislature and the governor reached on farmer. And so this is, I see as a floor, not a ceiling. This is like the opening dollar amount. We still think there's potential to ask for more money for the farmer program, but it is the amount that was committed to as a minimum out of the 2-year deal last year. AB 617, as you're all aware, has become a big program in the Valley. The governor has proposed funding, but in total, it's not quite what it was in years past. He's proposed $50 million for statewide for implementation of 617. So that's to fund the air district work to do monitoring, run the community processes, and track implementation, and all of those things. That amount's remained static since the program started, even though every year the state's added communities. So we're basically spread thinner and thinner each year, with that money being stagnant. The other thing about the 50 million is every year we've had to, this year, it's good that it's in the governor's proposal, but we've had to kind of scrape and fight to get that money put in the budget. So we think if this program is going to continue as it's currently envisioned, there should be a dedicated funding source to fund the implementation of 617, but at least there is funding in there for that activity. However, the unfortunate thing is on the funding for incentives, the money that actually gets emission reductions through 617, we've seen that be in the $240 to $260 million range in the past, and that's been cut back to 180 million this year. So we would definitely like to see that restored at least to the level it's been in the past, and think there's an opportunity to push for an increase in that category. The California Department of Food and Agriculture has 85 million statewide for the Healthy Soils program. We see this as an opportunity to help deal with some of our ag waste reduction goals, and deal with some of the issues related to SGMA with land being taken out of production. That's more than Healthy Soils has gotten in the past. The program, I think, could be improved from how it's been run in the past. So I think we should let CDFA know what we think they should do to improve that program to make it more workable for the Valley as well. There's 85 million in the budget for a food processor incentive program. I know a lot of the Valley food processors fought for this initially. This funding basically goes to make food processors more efficient and look at the people who have been funded through that program. A lot of the Valley's food processing interest have taken advantage of this program. So that is definitely a pot we support, and would like to hear from others as far as how they see that working and whether that's an appropriate amount or whether we should be asking for more. One of the Valley's most popular programs, the Clean Cars for All program, it's part of our tune-up program. It helps fund advanced technology vehicles for lower income residents in disadvantaged communities. It received a fair amount of money last year, and then there was an additional 256 million added to that. It's a multi-year commitment to the program, and the Valley's definitely positioning ourselves to make sure that we get a maximum amount possible out of the Clean Cars for All program. The Valley has not done as well as other parts of the state under the first come first serve CVRP program for new advanced technology vehicle purchases. So we see Clean Cars for All as a program that maybe fits our region better. And given our demographics, we think the Valley should be prioritized in this category. And then the final category I wanted to mention is there's a quite substantial multi-year commitment last year and this year. I think in total it's about $10 billion for zero emission vehicles and equipment and infrastructure. This is a very ambitious goal for trying to achieve the governor's executive order to transition to a zero emission fleet. So we're looking for opportunities there, to move forward on zero emission equipment, and also to let the state know that we're all in where zero emission vehicles are available to be implemented, but potentially they need to look at other categories where zero is not ready. They need to take the best technology available, which may not be zero, but maybe near zero, and make sure there's funding available for those as well. So where we go from here is, now that the governor's proposal's out there, the legislature is going to have a very active coming, particularly month and potentially months, where they have hearings on the budget, come up with their own ideas. As I mentioned, we've already started discussions with a lot of stakeholders and with members of the legislature, but it's a prime time to kind of let the Valley's interest be known. So with that, I would turn over to Samir or to the committee for comments and questions.
Through the chair, just real quick, I just want to make sure you can hear us here in the VTC room fine. Just a real quick sound check. All right, thank you so much. Yeah, so with that update, I wanted to bring it back to the CAC for discussion and potential action on actually being involved in advocating for these very important clean air funds, which are critical to the implementation of a variety of strategies that we've been talking about. You know, one of the other areas, for example, that isn't in the budget, but that it has been part of our priority push, has been more funding to support the agricultural open burning transition, which is something that we've communicated to the governor and wanted to put that out there as well for discussion, along with some of the other priorities that Tom had just talked about, and maybe plussing up, as we call it, some of those categories to add more funds, even than where the governor's proposed budget includes here in January with that version of the budget. So, and just as a reminder, and for those that are new as well on the committee, in the past, the CAC has basically reached consensus on supporting those clean air priorities in the budget to add more weight to the advocacy. Generally, it's been in the form of a letter that has been signed on by the 3 different interest groups that are represented here on the CAC. And there's been different processes that have been used to ultimately land that letter. We, for example, in the past have with direction from the CAC and knowing what those priorities are, which have included in the past farmer, the community air protection funds, in this case, I think with the agricultural burning phase out, that's been a priority in the past. And then all of the other transportation mobile source funds that help transition these different fleets to the cleaner technologies. Those have all in the past been priorities that the CAC has advocated for to support that process in the budget. My recommendation would be that the CAC consider taking that position again this year, just given that there is significant funding potentially available in the budget. And I think it is very helpful to have support from the various groups to be able to make that push once again this year. And I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair, and the CAC for discussion and maybe some next steps on that.
Okay, great. Tom, thank you very much. Samir, appreciate the comments. And we've been very, the 3 groups have been very supportive throughout several years of supporting the districts and the board's platform upon these budget items. And I do agree with some modification to this. Tom, I think on this one, I definitely would be greatly concerned on the independent trucker. As we've been noticing, the cost of electric trucks have gone through incredible roofs. I mean, a 3-axle or a 2-axle, 26,000 pound and above, $400,000 up to $600,000 for one truck. And they're not even out there yet, but we have many rural communities that have trucks that are going to expire this coming year in 23. And those are in our rural communities. They own that one truck. And we've mentioned this before to ARB. They need to have that, the most cleanest truck available, used, and have that program be available, functionable for these independent truckers, because there's no way, as over the last 2 months, what we've looked into with the trucking manufacturers of electric vehicles that aren't really ready, they're not. And to make and have an independent trucker go out there and try to buy or go get a loan for $400,000 to $500,000, and that's the actual cost of a 3-axle tractor, 80,000 pound truck. There's no way. But I think the comments that were made by you about allowing more flexibility to having the cleanest vehicle, of having a Tier 4 final engine in there, is a lot cleaner than having a 2008 or any of those age limit trucks, 99 or 2000, allow that. So I'm excited to hear, though, that maybe we might have an opportunity to modify this 6 billion and make that category to where those funds, and here's the catch, have to be run through the air district. They cannot be through the ARB's program. It's too difficult. We've had the loan program and all those, and they're very, very difficult. So I think for this valley, so we can get the fastest results out there so we don't lose jobs, we don't hurt families in rural communities, especially the 617 areas. So I look forward to working with you very efficiently with other folks to make sure that we deal with these trucks real in the real world, not in something that is, you know, and we've dealt with it. For the last 2.5 months, I actually visited and been part of a manufacturer, and it was been just very frustrating. So I think that's going to be an important part of making sure. And I'm glad to see an increase in the Clean Car program. Absolutely one of the greatest programs you've got going in the Valley here, and you guys started it. And I'll never forget the one, and I'll make a comment here, then I'll shut up and open it up. But a woman goes to get her $500 tune-up for her engine so she can get it registered. And we gave her a voucher for $500 to get it done. And when interviewed her at the line, she said now that she got this, she'll be able to get her car taken care of. But what the money is she is saving now, she can put it into food and her family and her kids. So that goes a long way. And I think you guys have done a great job on that. So, and Samir, the ag burn, absolutely. We need to continue because there's a lot of uncertainty items there. And I think we're doing this in 3 years when we've had opportunities in other areas, but the grape industry, very difficult to deal with because of the iron and steel that's in those vineyards. So I look forward to making sure we put some continual money in there for that purpose. I'll stop here and open it up to the CAC members in the North, Central, and South for any comments to Tom or to Samir on the budget.
Through the chair, it looks like Chris Savage has a question.
Okay, Chris, go for it.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate the update. Yeah, healthy amount of money flowing. I suspect it will continue for the next couple years before we start to see it ratchet back. You had asked a couple questions I wanted to comment on. One is the $85 million for the food processor grant. Whether that's sufficient or not, I think it's probably okay, but let's continue to advocate for it because it is well-used funds that produce a lot of benefit from an air quality standpoint. So I would definitely advocate we keep pushing for that. I did have some questions around the $6 billion. It's just kind of a, it's a big number that's a little nebulous in terms of exactly how it's going to be spent. I think maybe when you have a little more clarity on that, if you could bring that back to this group, I think that would be helpful so we understand where we're headed. Third comment I'll make is, and this is more just a thought than a well-developed idea, is as we look to, and I'm a bit of a broken record on this point, develop new emission reduction credits, whether any of this funding can be, helpful in achieving those reductions, in areas that could help produce some of those, produce some additional credits that could be used. I know there's some potential problems with that. I'm just going to put it out there for your consideration. And as you're thinking about other funding sources, have that in the back of your mind. And then the last comment is that I would be supportive of the CAC drafting a similar letter as what we've done in the past in support of those funding proposals and, your work up there. So, Mr. Chair, when the time comes, if you need me to make that motion, I'm happy to do that.
Great. Thank you very much, Chris. Any other in the North or South or Central?
Oh, sorry. It looks like Mary Elizabeth, has a question.
Go ahead, please.
That's all right. Thank you. I had a couple. I was wondering, since there was a reduction in that farmer program, how much was actually spent last year? Did you spend all of it?
So when the state budgets money, oftentimes there's a delay in the money actually getting released to us. But the farmer program has always been hugely popular and oversubscribed. So we will be spending all of our farmer money that we get from last year And from the coming year, if it's budgeted the way it is, we never have an issue spending the money. There are some timing issues of when the state releases it to us and when it actually gets put out the door. But there will be no issue spending the money from last year. That's for certain.
Okay, and then another question on the incentives for the AB 617. I was wondering if that was for new communities that are just coming on board, or is that some kind of backfilling of funds from previously awarded communities?
To the chair, Mary, I can take that question. This Samir, that's a great question too. So that funding is, I would say, generally all of the above. So that funding is eligible to be used in low-income and disadvantaged communities, but it is also purposed. So, for example, when communities are added, and we look for ways to fund, some of the measures that are developed there with the community steering committees. That is also the same pot for that as well. So there aren't funds that are only dedicated to one or the other. These funds are actually eligible to be used for both purposes. So we'd be looking to support, not only identified communities, but also deploying those funds in other eligible, and obviously in the Valley, there's quite a few communities that are eligible that are low income and disadvantaged as defined by the state. So that funding is eligible for across the board for all of those purposes.
Thank you. And then I had one other comment regarding the healthy soils. And Tom, this is a good program, but it's kind of hidden, and it could definitely be advanced. And I appreciate, what the APCD is doing, to incorporate healthy soils as part of emission control. And I think it could also be very helpful for fugitive dust issues. And so I would like to see even more on that, and collaboration with the California Department of Food and Ag, with APCD, CARB, as well as the regional boards and the state board of water. So there's good potential, very important for us to be considering, water and air together. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Anybody else from the CAC, either in the north or central?
Mr. Liba?
Mr. Liba?
Yes, Mary Elizabeth, if you can hear me, okay. Brought up a good question, because in our Stockton AB 617 area, we failed to request appropriations for a project some people thought might be worthwhile. Would this additional funding allow our community, AB 617 community, to request funding for like the port project, which many people favored but did not pass? Thank you.
Okay, Samir, comment?
Yeah, I can just briefly respond to that, and then maybe we could touch base afterwards if it doesn't quite satisfy the question. But there's always been a desire to seek funding for any innovative, cost-effective emission reduction project, including even projects at the port. So that's always an open door. But as you know, there was a number of different details and circumstances as to why, specifically in that community emission reduction program, there isn't funding. But there always is an ability, given the right set of circumstances, to deploy funding to do projects like those. Whether it's this pot, whether it's even other pots. I mean, there's a big category of funding, for example, in the new federal infrastructure bill that deals with port and port electrification and things like that. So there's certainly going to be a lot of opportunities for talking about how to continue to reduce emissions at the port. So I just wanted to generally provide that response, and hopefully we can figure out ways to continue that march to reduce emissions from all the sources in the community there.
Great. Thank you, Samir. Thank you, Mr. Libra. Anybody else?
Through the chair, I see no additional member comments on this item.
Okay, great. Let's go to the public. If there's any comment in the public for the North, Central, and Southern, any comment?
Through the chair, I see no indication of public comment.
Okay, great. Now coming
Hey,
back to
Manny.
yes, go ahead, Mr. Clark.
I think I'd vote for a new chairman myself. I mean, this is first meeting, man. You really messed it up. Tell you that right now. Cut your pay. And my question was on 6/17. The competition is going to be keen there. My recollection was that CARB's going to pick up a major part of the tab to implement this program. And I could see by looking at the numbers here, probably Kern County, or not Kern County, but San Joaquin Valley is going to have to compete very hard to get their share of the money. To me, this is a 6/17 is a rule-making process without the due process involved. So I have some concern with that, and I agree with the idea of sending a letter up there and asking, making sure our well known what we'd like to be a part of as far as the AB 6/17. Because without that, it's going to cost a lot more money, and CARB is backing out of their original commitment, which is not surprising. So I have some real concerns with that, and I would say to you guys that are up there walking the halls, good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Any other members, Michelle, anybody we see, or are we okay?
Through the chair, I see no additional member hands raised nor public.
Okay, great. Tom, I think at the end of the day, these monies for the San Joaquin Valley, as even Mr. Leva said, and for assisting and helping the ports, they definitely need financial assistance as well because of all of the constraints that they're under. And Stockton is not as heavily as a container company or shipping company, but it still has quite a bit of activity and support. So I think those are good ideas. First thing is, Samir, in doing and drafting this letter, we can get the three groups. And so we'll have somebody make a motion, then a second, and we'll have a vote. We would have the three members from the three groups, as well as, then would that go to our chair and to you, to the chair of the board? Or would we send it directly to Sacramento from the chair, from you?
Yeah, let me, and Tom, help me out on this as I work through some of the details here, what a potential path for this might be. And by the way, just before I jump into there, I wanted to make sure for Chris's, I think there were questions, but also comments, on some of the, Chris Savage, on the food processor item in particular. I just wanted to let you know that that was something that our board recently, as part of our ledge platform, specifically, supported and that we've included in our advocacy. And I definitely see it as we want to defend at least the funding that's in the proposed budget, but maybe even increase it potentially if we can. So I think that's certainly something that the district is advocating for as well. But as far as the pathway for this, our recommendation would be to submit the letter to the governor's office as well as leadership within the legislature, just to make sure that all the various branches are aware of the priorities. As far as drafting of the letter, what we could do is we can take the first shot at drafting a letter consistent with the direction that we received from the CAC members today. The priorities that traditionally, or certainly the last year or so, that we've been focusing on have been farmer, community air protection funding, and then the variety of other clean air transportation type project funds. The one other thing that we need to mention during this presentation and we have, I think I want to say the CAC, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, has supported in the past, but the continued funding under we have a DMV funding source, that is up for potential reauthorization or extension. There's a sunset on that funding source. It's a very important local clean air funding source that we currently use for a variety of projects, including tune in, tune up, agricultural equipment, and a variety of other categories. That's something that it's not specific to the state budget, but that I wanted to make sure the CAC is aware of that in the past when we've advocated for the various funding priorities, we've also looked to see if the legislature would be able to extend that sunset that's currently on that funding that is by the end of 2023 or mid 2024, but essentially it's coming up in about a year or in about 2 years right now. So we'll see if in this legislative session we're able to deal with that issue, or if it's something that carries over into the next. But it is something that has been a priority in the prior CAC letters. I just wanted to remind the CAC of that. I think it's something that we certainly wanted to put on the table for your discussion today. What we could do is we could draft a starting point letter on this, and depending on how fast the CAC wants to get this letter out to the governor and legislature, we could take direction today with the priorities that I just outlined, which are consistent with what the CAC has done in the past. We can add the agricultural burning funding as well, which isn't in the budget now, but I think has been a priority of the CAC as well. And just based on this discussion, we can actually draft it. And if the CAC was comfortable giving each of the interest groups the ability to sign on to that letter based on the general direction today, that's one approach that's been used. Or if the CAC wants to actually see that letter, it would just take longer, but we could bring it back to the next agenda and and talk it over some more. But at some point along the way here, it does start getting a little bit late in the game to just for advocacy point of view. So and I've seen both paths used successfully in the past. There may even be a third path. I'm open to suggestions on that if you wanted to have a small group of you maybe talk about this, and be empowered to be able to go ahead and get that letter out. But I think what's important is just getting hopefully consensus, but direction from the CAC, and so we can then take some action and support that action. And we would be happy to draft that letter and get it in front of whatever that process looks like.
Okay, great. Thank you, Samir. The wishes of the board, I think Samir's comments, I think, are important to add the DMV fees, which is our local valley fees. And those have been used for a lot of our rural community on activities. Some of our cities have gained some definite benefits of those. Those are funds that we know we get every year and coming in rather than having to be waiting for the legislature and all that. They have done some really great opportunities, even the car program and fireplace program and other things where it's been a tremendous benefit. So I think it's been in the past, we've included the DMVs to make it part of that. I think it's all one package. It should try to go like that. And then secondly, in the comment of maybe the three groups, leaders, each of the persons be given somewhat of the authority to go ahead and let's get this letter done and let's get it to our board as well as to the governor right away before there's any changes and things. Everybody's going to go after the money. So we might as well put in our request for the 617 activities, making sure there's implementation fees in there to help these districts, especially the San Joaquin Valley, as well as to helping dealing with the truck program, the zero emissions and a viable source of transportation that is available for our community. So what is the wishes of the board?
Through the chair, Mayor Fast has her hand raised.
Mayor, please go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I support writing a letter to the governor. I think the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and we need to make sure we keep in the forefront of supporting our farmers in the area for different projects. I think that's really important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Very good. Anybody else? Okay, Chris, you were talking about that maybe you would be willing to, or anybody for direction of the letter, and maybe the three groups get together by Zoom and finalize the letter with Samir, and then get that to the board, and then get it to the governor and the legislative body so we don't waste the valuable time of February. And let's get our wheel squeaking first before waiting for maybe the March or April or things like that. So, Chris, any ideas?
Mr. Chair, I'm happy and content to make the motion that we proceed as described. So the motion would be that the staff would go back and prepare a draft letter to be considered by each of the representative working area leaders, that they would have the authority to sign that letter and then get it out the door as soon as possible. with a copy of the letter be sent back to the full CAC board once approved.
Okay, great. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Mayor Fast.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor. Okay, at this time, Michelle, can we, we'll go ahead, Samir, and if that works for you, then we'll pull that together right away. Thank you very much, both the mayor and Chris, for the motion and the second. Michelle, let's go ahead and have a vote.
Sure. Through the chair, I'll call for public comment first. Is there
Oh,
any
yes,
public
I'm
comment on
sorry.
this item? No, that's okay. Seeing none, I'll go ahead with the roll call. Mr. Cunha?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Harrell? Mr. Harrell, can you hear me? Oh, he has his hand raised, yes. Mr. Hofdahl?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Savage?
Yes.
Ms. Austin Tibbetts? Looks like she may have dropped off. Ms. Dyer? Ms. Dyer, can you hear me? She's not here. Mr. Liba?
Yes.
Mr. Helm?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Fast?
Yes.
Mr. Ward?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien? I believe he's left the meeting. And Mr. Medeiros?
Yes.
Thank you. I need to go back to the environmental interest group. Try again. Ms. Austin Tibbetts, are you with us? And Ms. Dyer. Ms. Dyer is logged on. We're one vote short in the environmental interest group.
And through the chair, Michelle, this is Derek Williams. I am here and I vote yes.
Great. Thank you, Derek. So we still are one vote short. Sure.
She's acceptable.
Absolutely.
And I have,
We can come back to that.
Mr. Chair, can I have clarification? When that's finalized and before it goes out, all members of the CAC will receive a copy prior to sending.
Yes.
Is that correct? Very good.
No, no, the three groups would make those decisions and get it done and then send it out after it's been approved by the three groups. So we can
Okay.
get it to the board in time in February for our board.
Very good.
Okay, thank you. Any, Michelle, can we hold this and come back to it?
out to Ms. Dyer.
Okay, okay, all right, super. So we're gonna hold this thing in hold and then come back to it, and we'll go to item number 10, which will be John Clausen on the regulatory side of the issues on the plan. Okay, so John, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. And building off of my update earlier this morning, I'll provide a little more detail on where we are with different planning efforts and regulatory efforts. I won't take too long with this. I'll try to be brief with it, but this will give you a little more detail. So a little bit of background on our efforts, especially for our newer members to understand this. The district has adopted a number of attainment plans over the years to address the federal air quality standards. Stationary source emissions have been reduced by over 90%, and that combined with CARB's strategy for mobile sources is the toughest air quality program in the nation. We have a strong incentive program. Over $4.2 billion have been spent investing in new clean technologies. And with all of this invested, we continue to make progress in improving the valley's air quality, but we still need to go further to attain the latest federal standards. This will require work by us here at the district, CARB and EPA, to identify more emissions reductions, new technologies. And at this point, over 80% of NOx emissions in the valley come from mobile sources under the state and federal jurisdiction. So I won't read all of the different points in this table here, but the point of this slide is to show all the different actions that have happened so far for PM 2.5 attainment plans that we've put together. I mentioned some of these in my previous update, but you can see that the last couple of years have been very busy with EPA taking actions on a number of our plans within our comprehensive 2018 PM 2.5 plan. And this slide is showing the progress that we have made in improving PM 2.5 throughout the valley. And Mr. Lieb always makes a good point that some areas of the valley already are doing really well with some of these pollutants. So You can see up in the North Valley, things are looking pretty good, but there's still some areas of the valley where we still need to see more improvements to get us into attainment of these PM 2.5 standards. For ozone, we also have a number of attainment plans that address the ozone standards. We have 3 ozone plans in place right now that you can see up at the top of the slide. And we are getting very close to attaining that initial 8-hour ozone standard of 84 parts per billion. That was a standard set in 1997. We're getting very close to that. It will likely require some exceptional events work to document wildfire impacts. And then once that documentation is completed and we've attained that standard, we would have to do a maintenance plan to show our ongoing maintenance with that. So we're making progress, we're getting there. And this next slide here shows how far we've come with our ozone values going back in time to the early 1990s. You can see how high we used to be. But going forward in time, you see the great progress we've seen across the valley, where we are right on the threshold of attaining that initial 8-hour ozone standard. That's that dashed line, the orange line up there. We're getting very close. And then you can see how far we need to go to meet the next 2 standards of 75 and 70 parts per billion. That's the purple and green line just below there. Our board has taken a number of regulatory actions in the past couple of years to address different commitments from the 2018 PM 2.5 plan. Again, I won't read all the details on this table, but you can see it's been a very busy couple of years with our board taking actions on a number of rules or different strategies we put in place to continue to reduce emissions, to improve and lower PM 2.5 concentrations across the valley, with a number of these just happening in the last couple of months of last year in 2021. We're continuing to work on a number of planning and regulatory issues, and the amount and complexity of these issues continue to grow in the coming years. We expect it to continue to get more complicated. This is really critical for us to stay on top of these things, on top of these issues, because there are Clean Air Act consequences that could be punitive, including permitting sanctions, non-attainment penalties, loss of transportation funding, and loss of local control. And those are all issues that we don't want to be faced with. So staying on top of these planning issues is really critical for us in the Valley. As I mentioned before, there's a number of new plans that we're continuing to work on. One of them is the latest plan for the latest ozone standard that was set in 2015. This is the 8-hour average standard of 70 parts per billion. We are currently designated as extreme non-attainment, and we're working on the plan what's called the 2022 ozone plan, which is going to be considered by our board by the middle of this year. So this is an active project that we are working on. We've already taken a few actions our board has to address some elements of this plan, including the reasonable available control technology demonstration in 2020, as well as our emission statement program certification, and then clean fuels for boiler certification just last year. And there are a number of other elements that we show here in this slide that we're continuing to work on to address all the elements required for this plan that we're working through with CARB. We've had a number of workshops throughout the process to talk about our progress with these and get feedback. And we'll continue to do that over the coming months before the plan is considered by our board by the middle of this year. And we'll keep the CAC up to date here, as well as our governing board and our EJAG group. There are other attainment plans that we'll need to keep working through, specifically maintenance plans. So once we reach attainment of a standard, we then have to put together a maintenance plan, which shows our continued compliance with those air quality levels for a longer period. And in the coming year to 2 years, we need to work through a number of those maintenance plans, including updating our PM10 standard maintenance plan, a 1-hour ozone standard maintenance plan, and a maintenance plan for the 1997 PM 2.5 standard, as well as if we attain that first 8-hour ozone standard, we would have to put together a maintenance plan for that as well. Also, on top of this, EPA is currently looking at potentially setting new standards for both ozone and PM 2.5 this year in 2022, which could lower those standards even below 70 parts per billion for ozone, or below the current standards for PM 2.5. And if that does happen, that will start a whole new planning cycle, or we'd be required to put together a new plan, which could then require new rules and regulations and more commitments for emissions reductions. So we will be closely watching this throughout this year in 2022. Contingency is also a big element in our attainment plans. And the Federal Clean Air Act requires that non-attainment areas develop what's called a contingency measure within their plans that would be enacted if we fail to meet the attainment deadline or meet a planned milestone. There have been some recent court rulings regarding contingency that's requiring agencies like ours to resubmit their contingency measures to meet the newly interpreted requirements. And this affects us, other air districts throughout California, throughout the nation. CARB will also need to develop new updated contingency measures. And because of our non-attainment challenges, our air quality challenges, because we're extreme non-attainment for ozone, serious non-attainment for PM 2.5, we are already doing everything that we can do to get emissions reductions from stationary sources. CARB is doing the same for mobile sources. So this makes it very challenging for areas like ours to think of something above and beyond what we are already doing to get more emissions reductions if needed, if we trigger that. This will require significant analysis to think through this. Innovative approaches, stakeholder outreach, a public process. We'll be working closely with CARB and EPA through this later in 2022 with consideration later this fall in October is what we're anticipating. EPA continues to review different portions of plans that we've submitted to them, as well as different control measures. We work closely as they have questions, or we work with CARB as needed to provide more technical support. We'll continue to do that over the next year to a couple years as they consider all of the measures that we've submitted to EPA recently. And there could be potential further action as attainment deadlines for ozone and PM 2.5 standards draw near in the coming years. As I mentioned in my update earlier this morning, there are some control measures that we're continuing to develop over the coming year. One of those being Rule 4550, Conservation Management Practices. That was a commitment from our PM 2.5 plan. We're also looking at potential amendments to our refinery fence line air monitoring Rule 4460 based on recent court rulings. As I mentioned this morning, we're continuing to evaluate potential amendments to our leak detection and repair rules for VOC emissions as a part of our ongoing BARC effort. And additional rulemakings can come through our ongoing BARC analysis under AB 617 and other potential rulemakings from our contingency requirement process that I mentioned previously. We continue to track mobile source emission reduction measures, both at the state level and the federal level, as mobile source emissions contribute 80% of the NOx in the valley, which contribute to both ozone and PM 2.5 emissions and pollution in the valley. Tracking this is definitely key for us as CARB and EPA both develop measures to reduce pollution from mobile sources. We've been tracking this closely. This will be really key going forward for our PM 2.5 plans and also our ozone plans to continue to see reductions from mobile sources across the valley. As I mentioned, we have a number of attainment deadlines coming up soon. We have it listed here in this slide. In 2023, that's the attainment deadline for the 1997 8-hour ozone standard, the 84 parts per billion standard. That's the one that we're almost there. We're right on the threshold of attaining that standard. This is also the deadline for attaining the annual portion of the 1997 PM 2.5 standard. So 2023 is that deadline. The next year is the deadline for the 2006 24-hour average standard of 35 micrograms per meter cubed. And then 2025, just 1 year later, that is the deadline for the 2012 annual standard, average standard of 12 micrograms per meter cubed. Now, we are impacted by what's called exceptional events. Wildfires can contribute an enormous amount of emissions that impact the valley and other parts of California. That can severely impact our PM 2.5 air quality throughout the year, of course, and it can also spike our ozone values since fires produce both NOx and VOC, which can then cause higher ozone values to occur in the summertime in the valley. So because of that, we'll be looking closely at those different days from wildfires. It takes a lot of analysis to do this, modeling, highly complex work, extensive collaboration with CARB and EPA to make sure that we can document these events and ensure that those values are not included in our official calculations of whether we've attained the standard. And finally, just a note here about all of this work, all of this planning work and regulatory work. The foundation of it is air monitoring data, and we operate a comprehensive network throughout the San Joaquin Valley to measure air monitoring data 24/7 throughout the entire year. This is an extensive amount of work that will be ongoing through this period, and getting high quality data is absolutely critical to be able to show attainment of these standards. So our work here is going to be really critical over the coming years to make sure we have complete high quality data to take these different planning actions. And this requires an extensive amount of dedication from our team to make this happen. And this work will be ongoing. And that's it for my update, and I'll pass it over to Samir if you wanted to make any closing comments.
Yeah,
Samir.
thanks, John, and thanks for giving us an abbreviated version of quite a bit of information. I'm sure there are either now or later some questions around every one of these efforts is quite complex and going to require some extensive interaction. So I just wanted to make sure you understood the purpose of the item was really to keep you in a little bit more detailed way than what you might typically hear updated on what are going to be some really important developments over the coming year or two. We are at a critical juncture. The deadlines that John mentioned, 2023, 24, and 25. We are in the middle now of that 3-year what's called a design value for those standards. So it is something that we're going to be working on very closely here at the Air District, but also closely with the oversight agencies to make sure that the accounting is done as well as it could be, and that we're in the best position possible to hopefully meet these different standards, by those different dates. One thing I also wanted to mention to the CAC as a related item is that, given the importance of this work to the Valley, the public health importance, as well as the regulatory certainty and the critical nature of that engagement in terms of developing these different measures, including, for example, the new contingency package, which is going to be very, very interesting and complex, I think, to pull together. There is a new director that I'll be happy to introduce at a future meeting that will be overseeing the air quality planning and regulatory work to make sure that we have some enhanced resource dedicated to what is such a critical part of what we do here at the Air District. So this is just something I wanted to let you know that was part of board action recently as it related to the same discussion that we had at our January board meeting. So with that, I will close our comments and turn it back to you, Mr. Chair, for any discussion from the CAC on this.
Great. Thank you very much, John. Thank you, Samir, very much. I look forward to getting that person on board as fast as we can. Let's open it at this time to the CAC members. Any comments?
Sir, it looks like Mary Elizabeth has her hand raised.
Okay, Mary.
Hi, so I had two comments, questions. One is, many of you seem to be aware of Sigma, and it requires consideration for sustainability, drought conditions that are anticipated related to climate change. And so I'm wondering, if the Air District is in looking at these wildfires as strictly an exceptional event, are holding back on really progressive and forward-thinking consideration that we will continue to have more wildfires, that wildfires should not be considered as a strictly exceptional event given our climate change regime. So that was one comment that I had. The second comment is, you all were recognizing the impact of mobile sources and putting it all on the hands of CARP for the most part. Well, I just would like to call your attention to Rule 9410, which is the trip reduction plan that is required for employers that have more than 100 employees. And it's my understanding from having gone through a bit of that regulatory process that it seems that that is a voluntary program. And I would like consideration that it not be a voluntary program, that it be a required program, so that we can dial down our trip reductions in communities with large employers. Thank you.
Through the chair, if I could respond quickly to those. Yeah, thanks, Mary Elizabeth. Really great questions and points. I just wanted to respond to each of those really quickly here. On the exceptional event comment as it relates to climate change, when we talked here about the plans and the various regulatory efforts, we were talking about it primarily from a Clean Air Act context. And when you look at the way the Clean Air Act is designed, first with the establishment of the standards, but then the planning process, which obviously has been underway for a long time, and in the context of the deadlines that are in front of us now, starting next year, right, 23, 24, and then 25, under the Clean Air Act, wildfires are, along with high winds, are the two really frequent and generally accepted what are called "quote unquote" exceptional events that already have a very very established and sort of a documented process for being addressed under existing EPA driven Clean Air Act implementation. Now you bring up a larger point around climate change and how in upcoming work to look at strategies and whether it's a scoping plan that the state of California is currently working on right now. California has been a leader in looking at climate and as I'm sure has put into place far beyond what most of the world has done on issues related to climate. There obviously is a bigger discussion around forest management and a variety of other issues as it relates to lower carbon and dealing with a variety of issues there. So I just want to let you know that that's obviously something that we're engaged on and that we're working on as part of sustainability efforts and looking at how do we address those issues as we move forward. And that's obviously a global issue. It's not just limited to California. But here in the context of just to recap on the Clean Air Act, wildfires are considered exceptional events, and there's a process by which whenever those events occur, that you have to document the impacts of those events. And so that's just something I wanted to kind of clarify the distinction between some of these different things that are going on. And then I would just say on the E-trip, the trip reduction measure that you're talking about, absolutely agree with you that I think it is something that we definitely want to continue revamping efforts in that space to see if we can do more, with whatever we could do locally on even if indirectly or directly, as much as we can. We don't actually have primary, just again, for the benefit of the CAC members, especially the new ones. Most of the regulatory authority as it relates to mobile sources is driven at the state and federal level, but there are ways that we can try to influence that either through incentives or through programs like E-Trip to try to continue to reduce those emissions as best as we can. So we'll definitely be, I agree with you, Mary Elizabeth, if we can find a way to really to push in that area, we'll definitely be looking forward to more to come in that space. So.
Okay, thank you, Samir. Any other questions?
Through the chair, I see no additional member comments on this item.
Okay, how about the public?
And I do not see public comment on this item.
Okay, great. Also, Samir, on some of these items like E-Trip, I think why we have voluntary programs in some issues is because of labor unions, labor agreements, and who can ride with somebody. And especially in the last 2 years, there's been very little employers meeting because of COVID. A tremendous amount of reduction has occurred, in businesses and everything. But I appreciate her comments, but we also have to deal with labor issue and agreements and all that. And even in agriculture, we cannot ask a worker to ride with somebody else because of our violation of labor laws. So I think the voluntary program needs to be readdressed as one of those items again, because there is a lot of other complicated issues. But I think it was a good question to not forget it. But I think we can continually do things that are voluntary that do have incentives to help. And I think we're looking at anything you can, but again, it's a bigger picture when you come to labor and you ask people to ride with somebody else. It's just all complex.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, please.
I think it's just important for clarification purposes. I just want to say one quick thing about the E-Trip. That there is a regulatory component, but I think where there's a lot of room is there's a lot of flexibility in how an employer can take a look at different ways of reducing the vehicle miles associated with commute. I think with telecommuting in the sectors where you've really seen this take off and a lot of development has occurred in that area, one of the big priority areas is going to be for us to find ways to encourage and then also credit those that are able to reduce vehicle trips through enhanced telecommuting. Obviously, that's a big area of development these last couple of years. But I did want to note that there is a regulatory component to this, but there's also flexibility in how you can comply, as well as maybe working with employers that aren't even subject to some of the regulatory components. But how do you encourage that as well? Beyond even what the rule would require. So I think there's a lot going on there, but I think it is something that we definitely want to
keep
want to
on.
see what the opportunities are. Yeah.
Super, great.
Thanks.
Okay, great, thank you. Not seeing any more comments or questions of Mr. John or Samir. We'll move on to item number 11, the 617 update. First, we'll start off with Ms. Olson, and then we'll go to Mr. Reyes or Miss Reyes.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Manuel.
Yeah, go ahead, kid. You're on, please.
All right. So, well, good morning, everyone. Mr. Chair, thank you, members of the committee, and welcome to the new members of the committee. My name is Jessica Olson. I am the Director of Community Strategies and Resources here at the district. And one of my main projects that I oversee is the district's implementation of AB 617. And so just kind of by way of brief background, we meet regularly with 4 community steering committees across the valley. Those 4 committees are in South Central Fresno, Shafter, Stockton, and most recently throughout this whole past year, we've been meeting in Arvin-Lamont. Arvin-Lamont is our newest community. It's in Southern Kern County, and it's been meeting pretty frequently, not only monthly like we typically do in our normal steering committee meetings, but actually sometimes more frequently because they're in what we're calling our SERP development process. So in 617, each of these communities is required, or at least the way that we were selected by the state, is required to develop community emissions reduction programs and community air monitoring plans to help reduce exposure to or reduce emissions in these different communities. And so that first year as a committee is a really intensive year. And so we're kind of in the midst of that in Arvin-Lamont. By way of an update, especially for the rest of the committee that's been tracking this really closely. A lot of you all know, and it's been even discussed a little bit today, the timelines in AB 617 are really short. And there's been a lot of concern on the state side and certainly on the community member side of having these shortened timelines to develop these really important plans and programs. And certainly that's true in Arvin-Lamont. And actually since our last update that I provided to this committee, the Arvin-Lamont CSC or Community Steering Committee came to a consensus to ask the district request of CARB to extend the deadline for SERP development. We did the same thing actually last year in Stockton, just to allow more time for community-driven development of that really important document. And so as of right now, the request that we sent to CARB and they were supportive of was to extend the deadline not to this month, which is when it would have been due, but to June. So we have about 4 more months to continue meeting with that steering committee and working on that process. And certainly there's definitely a lot going on. We have actually 2 meetings this month just to kind of continue to kickstart that process. As far the other community steering committees, I'll just be really brief. We continue to meet monthly. We have lots of subcommittees that meet on a regular basis, sometimes just scheduled as needed. Some are kind of on a regular frequency. You heard an update earlier from Samir on a big item we took to our board for Stockton, which just represents a dedicated and increased funding amount for the residential wood burning program. And that's certainly a high priority measure for that group. And we have several other subcommittees that are meeting across the valley. And if you go to community.valleyair.org, you can or .com, you can see that the that all of the different steering committees have their own dedicated websites, and that website can steer you in the right direction for understanding each of those different measures and kind of how they're being implemented if you're interested. There's certainly almost too much to update you on here, but we have lots of different trackers. Lots of folks even on this call are involved in those subcommittees, and I'm sure they'd be happy to present any additional information that I'm leaving out. And then just finally, one of the main things that we talk about regularly in this steering committee or in this even CAC update is that CARB, the California Air Resources Board, of course, oversees the whole program. And one of the main things they oversee during implementation, which is after we've adopted these programs, we have to go to CARB for several of the different incentives measures to work on specific smaller plans to approve the individual incentives measures. And so CARB has approved a really large handful of them already. We're definitely ahead of a lot of the steering committees in the state on getting those approved by CARB, and CARB is working with us on a handful actually right now that we expect continued approval on in the coming weeks. So that's kind of generally where we're at with AB 617. I'm happy to take any comments or questions or provide any further updates. So thank you.
Okay, great. why don't we go ahead and if it's okay, Mr. Lieber, we'll go ahead and go to CARB and then come back and then open it up. Is that okay? All right, why don't we go ahead with CARB, Ms. Reyes?
I believe we have Vern Hughes. Let me,
Okay,
I've been
Vern.
trying to move him over.
Okay, Mr. Hughes.
It looks like he might be now. Give him just a minute. I think he's with us. There he is.
Okay. Mr. Hughes?
Yeah, thank you. Delby sends her regrets. She was not able to make the meeting, so asked me to stand in. So sorry for the late change, Mr.
No, you're fine. Please go ahead, sir.
All right. So yeah, just given a quick program status. So Jessica already touched on the four Valley communities. There's 15 communities in the program, as you may recall. The recent state budget has about it looks like 180 million in the budget for incentive programs and 50 million to support local air district implementation and 10 for technical assistance is the air grants components of the program. So it's slightly less funding than in prior years, which will it will impact the recommendations for new communities into the program. Just the flat funding essentially will have that impact. I'll touch on that in just a minute here. But I didn't want to touch on just the impact that the program is on CARB in terms of our executive officer, Richard Corey, kind of touched on this last week. He did an annual program priorities for CARB presentation for our board. And certainly, the program is impacting how CARB does community engagement. So we're looking at how we can infuse community benefits, conveying community benefits from our programs at large moving forward. So it's really having more impacts than just the selected communities is what I'm trying to say. Let's see, another touch point here is on the consultation group. I've been letting you know about consultation group meetings. The last meeting was held just last month. And the consultation group will continue, of course, to meet every month or two. One of the larger products out of that group is the People's Blueprint that the consultation group is working on. So that work is continuing to move forward. In February, the February board hearing at CARB, we will be recommending, this gets to the community recommendations, to communities this year. And you may have seen in the staff report, there were a number of communities recommended, but with the caveat that, with funding availability and given the flat funding in the state budget, recommending 2, East Oakland and International Border area in San Diego. It's a San Ysidro to Mesa border region. So that will be covered. That will be part of the February board meeting for CARB. And then in May, there's going to be another board item that covers kind of a look to the future, kind of reimagining the program and sort of looking at, again, back to community engagement, how the program is impacting CARB staffs and communities on our broader program. And also that reimagining sort of content will cover the blueprint update. So I mentioned the People's Blueprint earlier. That's something that the consultation group has been working on. That will help inform the CARB rolling out a version 2 of the Community Air Protection Blueprint. And that whole process will be laid out in the May board meeting as well. So, Chair, that's what I had for the CARB report on AB 617. So happy to take any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. At this time, I'll open it up to CAC members. Mr. Lieber, I know that you had your hand up. Please go ahead, sir.
Very quickly, I do want to compliment the Air Board, the AB 617 in Stockton. We're having health studies. Very, very important. I hope that is something that will be incorporated in all the AB 617 areas. So thank you, and something to consider.
Thank you. Any other comments from CAC members, the North, Central, or Southern?
Through the chair, I see no indication of member comment.
Okay, let's go to the public.
I see no indication of public comment.
Okay, great. We'll bring it back to here. Again, thank you both very much for the presentation, and we look forward to continuing with reports to the CAC. Thank you. Let's go to item number 12, outreach. Jamie Holt, but this is definitely, at least my eyes aren't bad.
Hi, Manuel.
Okay, so please.
My name is Heather Hanks. I work with Jamie Holt, the amazing Jamie Holt, and I'm so happy to be here with you today, you and the rest of the committee. Be happy to give you a quick update. I know we are running short on time. Oh, I'm in a weird spot. I should look that way. Yeah, come around. It's kids calendar time. And we have kids calendars available. If any of you would like to request some, we can give you lots to distribute to facilities. It is a wonderful program that we've done for about 20 years now. And we get artwork submitted from kids across the San Joaquin Valley, and every county is represented. And it looks amazing. And they're free. So make sure you request those from us. Outreach team's been busy with AB 617, promoting all the awesome work that you just heard Jess talking about. And you should be seeing and hearing ads for our burn cleaner program, switching out fireplaces, lots of ads running right now about ag programs, tractors, alternatives to ag burning incentives, and lots of good work in the outreach and in the outreach team. But make sure 2022 calendars are here, and we would like to share them with you. Look, I'm going to give you one personally. There you go.
Where's my color crayon?
I get the crayon.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Any questions from the board?
Through the chair, I see no indication of member comments.
Okay, and the public?
And no public comments on this.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And also, I would look forward to getting some of these from you for our kids in our packing houses and stuff, because there's the parents would love to. I will. I look forward to getting at least maybe 100 or so. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. We're going to go back to item number 9, which we have the number to complete a vote. So Michelle, can we start that over?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Cunha.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
What am I voting on?
Oh, I apologize. I'm sorry. We're voting on the amendment that was made by Chris and by Mayor Fast on the budget of getting the letter going to the governor, having the 3 groups get together to finalize it with Samir and stuff, and get a tar board and then send it to the governor and the legislative people on the budgetary priority items, such as the tractors, the manufacturing money, 617 monies, the truck monies, those things left.
Okay. Hey, I've already voted on that once. How many times I got to vote? You going to count my vote twice or just once?
I'm going to count you once right now. Right now.
Jamie, Christmas. I'm signing off.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Ms. Brown. Laura Brown, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, I'm sorry. I just had to walk away really quick.
No problem. We're taking a second vote on the letter to the governor regarding the state budget.
Oh, okay, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Harrell? I believe he may have left. Mr. Hofdahl?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Savage has left. Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Dyer?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Austin Tibbetts?
Yes.
Mr. Liba?
Yes.
Mr. Helm? I believe it looks like, okay, Mr. Harrell is here. And Mr. Harrell did vote yes. And it looks like Mr. Helm may have left. Mayor Fast?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Ward?
Yes.
And Mayor Maderos? Mr. Maderos?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion passes.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody, again, for your patience on this item, and appreciate it very much. And thank you, Mr. Clark. Let's go to item 13, CAC comments from any of the CAC members.
Through the chair, I see no indication of member comments.
Okay, great. Thank you again, all of you, for your patience today and getting through this, and I appreciate it, really do. And then as we keep going, we'll be increasing the membership for the 3 different groups. We're working very hard to get those complete with all the groups, of trying to have that done so we have 100% at least before May, and that's our goal. So again, I thank you all for your patience today. Any other members? There's nobody? Okay. At this time, presentation, we'll do it. We'll have the thing at the board. That'll be fine. Be happy to do it.
Mr. Chair, if I could,
yes,
before
please.
I just want to catch you right before you close the meeting.
Correct.
Just
Go
extend
for it.
my sincerest appreciation and gratitude for your patience as well on behalf of the staff, and apologies for all the technical hiccups, but thank you so much for sticking through it and helping get some CAC business done today. So appreciate all that, and hopefully we got that out of our system for the year. So thanks all.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. Again, we appreciate the whole staff and everybody for what they're doing to help us here. And again, everybody have a safe week, and be safe, and take care of yourselves. And we'll see you at our next meeting. And thank you all for collaborating and working on the budget. Meeting is adjourned. Am I bad?